Hey guys, Kyle from YWT here, back with another Philadelphia Flyers post-game recap. We have another W to talk about. The Flyers emerged victorious tonight, 3-2 over the New York Islanders. They played pretty well for the first 15 minutes. And you got two quick goals. You got Jake Voracek 3.5 minutes in. You got Kevin Hayes about 14 minutes in. And that was kind of it for a very long time. The Flyers had a lead. The Flyers were the better team for most of the first period. Like I said, they were fairly dominant, honestly. And towards the end of the period, for some reason, it fell apart. And I don't know if they got up 2 goals and took their foot off the pedal. But something happened, and that's what I'm going to call it. They took their foot off the pedal. And you can't do that against a team like the Islanders because they will make you pay. And they came back, and the Flyers blew another 2-goal lead, and this game got tied up. And we're deep in the game, and it's a tie game. When you started strong and you were up 2-0, you got to be able to put teams away, and you can't allow teams to claw back in, because a lot of times that team that has the momentum will continue rolling, and will keep the momentum, and will win the game. And you got lucky tonight that Scott Laughton played really well in overtime, generated a couple of chances, and ended up beating Semyon Varlamov to get the game winner. But it was close. It wasn't easy, and you made it much harder than you needed to be, because again, after the first 15 minutes, you didn't show much for the next 40. You turned it on toward the end because you kind of had to, because it was a tie game, and all of a sudden you're fighting for your life, and they're coming for your neck. But it's got to be a more complete effort. And I know we've talked about, I feel like for the last several years, we've talked about this Flyers team not playing a full 60 minutes and not giving that effort the whole game. And it's a shame, too, because the team that came out in the first 15 minutes looked really, really good. Kevin was at the game, and he texted the group chat and said it's not just if it looks fast, it's because they are. He was at the game doing media, and he said they looked really, really good in person, and all that dried up after the first 15 minutes because, again, it wasn't good enough. Sam Morin made his debut tonight, made his season debut at left wing. And honestly, from an admittedly biased Sam Morin fan here, I think he looked pretty good. Take it with a grain of caution, take it with a grain of salt. It was his first game playing a new position. He had never really been there before. He looked rusty. He looked like a guy who hadn't really played much professional hockey in 2 years. That being said, he took a couple good shots on net. He was willing to get involved physically. Alain Vigneault trusted him enough to run him out there in a tie game in the third period. Not a ton, but he played a little bit down the stretch. He played enough down the stretch that Alain Vigneault trusted him. And that's a good thing. It's not really a whole lot more you can ask for out of Sam Morin. He was kind of the big story coming in because he came in at the expense of Travis Konecny. And that news broke earlier today that Travis Konecny was being scratched, and it was later confirmed that he was indeed healthy scratched. This was not health-related reasons. Alain Vigneault specifically mentioned that Travis Konecny needs to work on his 5-on-5 play, and he was sending a message. The coach was sending a message that it doesn't matter if you're second in the league in scoring, like Travis Konecny is. If you're not playing well enough 5-on-5, if you're not giving the complete effort that the coach is looking for, you will sit in the press box. And Alain Vigneault has no problem doing that to send a message. And I think that's where we got a lot of the jam out of this team in the first period. A lot of this team, it was fired up. You saw guys skating like they were skating for their job. And I don't know how many of them were, honestly. Connor Bunnaman might have been, Nicolas Aube-Kubel might have been, Sam Morin might have been, and they all looked pretty good. But you got some jump out of your top 6 too. Again, I mentioned that Voracek and Hayes were your goal scorers. It's nice seeing some production out of your top 6 because they were quiet against New Jersey, especially on Thursday. It's we saw some production. They got the message, but it didn't stick. And when you're up 2 goals and you run out of gas, you back off. I get it, but it's not really an acceptable effort, especially this early in the season, especially, after you've had some real poor efforts and your coach has come out and said some pretty negative things about you publicly. Alain Vigneault has called out specific lines. He called out, Travis Konechny by putting him on the bench. He has no problem vocalizing if you're not putting forth the effort that he wants you to put forth. And we've seen that so far. We saw that this week a lot, even though the Flyers won. I've missed a couple of games here. I had some computer problems, but I'm actually jumping on to record this week's podcast tonight. And we're going to talk a lot about this week and kind of the effort on this team. And we saw a little bit of again here tonight. You got the 2 points. You gave the Islanders a point, which you don't love doing in a world where you might come down to them in the division. You don't love giving them a point here, especially when you're up 2-0 in the first period, right? You want to keep your foot on the gas and put this kind of team away when you get a start like that, because you're not always going to score 2 goals in the first period against this Islanders team. So to squander that and let them get a point out of it is pretty tough. So that being said, it's a quick turnaround. Sunday night. We're not going to talk about that on this week's podcast just because the timing is super funky, but I will be here for a post game. So make sure to follow along here on YouTube, YWT podcast, pretty much everywhere. You see it scrolling along the bottom of your screen, at YWT podcast, at Sports Talk PHL. Kevin's not here, but he's at Kevin_Durso. You all know the drill by now. I'll be back tomorrow with our post game. The show will go up right about after the first period. But again, we won't be talking about tomorrow night's game just because of the timing of things. But that being said, you got to win. And when you turn around, if you can do the same thing tomorrow night, they don't ask how, they ask how many. And tonight the Flyers got more than the Islanders did. So we hope that's enough. And we'll see if the Flyers can turn it around again tomorrow. I'll be back with a post game. See you then.